Season 5 is where I'd say Buffy as a whole peaked in quality. Most of the characters got to great points in their growth. The escalation of the threat was far beyond what had come before. The climax, relying on many minor pieces from before come together, was very well constructed, and the consequences of the finale make it understandable why it was meant to be the conclusion of the series, in case another network didn't pick it up for a 6th season. That's not to say the following seasons were tacked on at all, as there were absolutely some plot points or character arcs necessary to explore, and scenarios worth covering well if extending it, as I mentioned in my video on Buffy's resurrection. But it is amongst the things that stand out concerning Season 5. One particular episode that is a masterful change of pace for the series lies within it, as, rather than focusing on supernatural conflicts, it grounds itself as a relatable, dramatic, and poignant tale of loss that is perhaps the best episode in the season, and one of the series' finest. I'm of course speaking of The Body. The premise is quite simple, yet important, in Buffy finding her mother's corpse, and the main characters processing the loss of Joyce in a manner so grounded to reality that it can feel almost dissonant to the series' regular tone, but in the best way. Despite these dour aspects, the scene after the recap of the previous episode's end is a somewhat comedic flashback to the Christmas dinner last year, with Anya telling Dawn about the real Santa Claus from her days as a vengeance demon, as well as Buffy making a callback to the embarrassment of her mother and Giles' actions when under the influence of the band candy in Season 3. This may seem odd for such a serious and distressing premise of the episode, but it shows how brilliantly the series balances multiple tones in reminding us not only of how we like to think back to the joyous times with our dearly departed, but on how quickly death can turn joy into sorrow. The following scene of Buffy processing her grief covers a wide array of thoughts and feelings as she progresses through it. There's her not accepting reality as she attempts to give her mother CPR, losing control as she enters a dumbfounded state around the paramedics, and later vomiting and then eventually unconsciously accepting the situation when telling Giles not to move the body in what's definitely one of Sarah Michelle Gellar's best scenes of acting within the series. All these moments display how truly overwhelming death of a loved one can be, particularly on those who haven't suffered so many of such losses in their lifetime. When the paramedics are seen to the body, we also initially are treated to a delusion of them miraculously reviving her before we snap back to reality. Despite Buffy having suffered several losses, changes, and consistent tragedy in her life, this is the first instance of one of those closest to her being lost from something that wasn't a reversible, supernatural cause, that truly puts the Slayer out of her element, in a reminder that not everyone can be saved through superhuman strength or magical aid. The next scene of Dawn at school starts with a twist, as a crying Dawn being told it isn't a big deal is then shown to be unaware of the news, and instead focused on insults labelled on her. The scene features excellent usage of impending dread as the audience slowly anticipates Dawn's reaction to the news following her playful antics in class that serve as a reminder of how such news can come at the most contrasting of times. It's also worth noting how the scene ends with a shot of the human body Dawn was drawn for class, not only for referencing the episode's title and focus, but how important perspective is. The human body is a phrase many think of in purely scientific terms, which stands opposed to the reaction many have when the human body they're confronted with is that of a loved one. Most of the scenes following this showcase the different ways in which the characters express or internalize their grief. Willow expresses it through becoming concerned with small things such as what would be best to wear when visiting the hospital. Xander shows both an insistence on pinning the blame on either Glory or the doctors as a way of removing the helplessness of it being more than random happenstance. Perhaps the most profound reaction amongst Buffy's friends is that of Anya initially displaying a seemingly stoic attitude about Joyce's fate, before revealing her lack in understanding as to the reason for mortality, as a reminder that she's still adjusting to being a human once more, and how difficult the concept of death has become for her to handle.
I don't understand. I don't understand how this all happens. How we go through this. I mean, I knew her, and then there's just a body. And I don't understand why she just can't get back in it and not be dead. anymore. It's stupid. It's mortal and stupid. And Xander's crying and not talking, and I was having fruit punch, and I thought, well, Joyce will never have any more fruit punch, ever, and she'll never have eggs, or yawn, or brush her hair, not ever, and no one will explain to me why.
This is good for the younger viewers of the series who may have little experience coping with the idea of a loved one passing away. It also brings up the most obvious yet difficult question on such a universal concept as death, being why it occurs. It's not as though this is random musing with no attempt at answer, either. When the series focus on concepts such as resurrection and immortals offers many perspectives. Perhaps it exists for change to always take place, as those with grand or infinite lifespans tend to become more static figures beyond the few exceptions, and the ticking clock of mortality acts as a call to progress. This would be fitting with the series' focus on the dynamic changes people can make over time, after all. All this silence and pondering is broken by Xander letting out his frustration when punching through the wall, and tension being alleviated by some comedic quips, such as comments on the poor craftsmanship, or Anya saying Xander now blames the wall, along with what I said previously on tone and change. This is quite appropriate in emotions and tone being something that can change quickly as a reaction to many things. When at the hospital, there's several interactions worth noting. Giles handling the technical and financial aspects of Joyce's death and funeral show how he cleansed his role as Buffy's watcher, and the paternal bond he's gained as well as that. Despite what doubts Spike had placed into him in the prior season, there are indeed still matters in which his aid is essential for her. We also get a good interaction between Buffy and Tara. Though Tara hadn't found the easiest time fitting into the group at first, this is one of the many interactions between her and Buffy that stand out as important moments of her sympathetic nature towards others, as she opens up about losing her own mother long ago. Along with showing she can relate to Buffy's pain, she gives a fairly profound answer when Buffy asks her if her mother's passing was quick.
No. And yes. It's always sudden.
No matter how much you prepare for the death of a loved one, the exact moment of it will always be unexpected, and one cannot say how they will handle it. Also, when Xander, Willow and Anya return with food for them all, I can't help but appreciate the detail in their choices fitting with their personalities. Xander carrying coffee fitting with his working life, making caffeine appreciated and needing far more of a boost when not as capable at most tasks as a slayer like Buffy or witches like Willow and Tara. Willow carrying what's mainly sweet treats fits with her childish and sweet side that she can have at times, and a major reason her arc going into a darker place in the following season was so important. Anya carrying sandwiches rich in protein and easily the most healthy option goes to show her efficiency in often taking the most objective look at a situation. The episode eventually results in Dawn going to the morgue in order to view her mother's body. This is the only instance in the episode to carry the series' typical supernatural action, with a vampire attacking her within it before Buffy dusts it. This doesn't clash with the focus of the episode, as the vampire itself is another path for the body. With the series having made it quite clear that vampires are soulless husks of the people they used to be, yes, even with Spike despite his character growth, which could be a topic for another time, that the main cast must accept as no longer who they were when staking them, much as how they must accept another body bereft of true life no longer being the person they once knew, something fully explored in the following episode with Dawn accepting her mother has passed on. The episode is a standout of Buffy in every way, from a more grounded premise than most, a focus on reactions to death and the need to accept it, excellent writing, acting and directing, as well as a reminder on how sudden the end is for many, along with the important repercussions from there on, such as Buffy being forced to provide for herself and Dawn. I have nothing but praise for what is easily one of the greatest episodes of such a great show. Moving away from the somber and towards the light-hearted and dramatic though, the next video in this series will cover another of one of the most celebrated episodes of the series.